Maya Torres moved into her new house on a cold October morning in Colorado, and she noticed something strange about the house next door right away. Nobody seemed to live there, but lights turned on at odd hours during the night. And sometimes she saw shadows moving behind the curtains when she looked out her bedroom window before going to sleep. Neighborhood was quiet and peaceful with tall pine trees and mountains in the distance, and Maya liked it that way because her new job at the Aerospace Research Center was stressful enough without noisy neighbors making things worse. 3 days after Maya moved in, she saw a woman standing in the yard next door, and the woman was beautiful in a way that made Maya stop and stare because she had long silver hair that seemed to glow in the sunlight, and her skin was pale like moonlight, and when she turned to look at Maya, her eyes were bright violet, like nothing Maya had ever seen before. Maya waved at her new neighbor, but the woman just stared at her for a long moment before turning and walking back into her house without saying anything, and Maya thought that was rude. But maybe the woman was shy or did not speak English very well that night. Maya was working at her computer in her home office when she heard a strange sound outside like wind chimes, but deeper and more musical, and when she looked out the window, she saw lights coming from the neighbor's house, but not normal lights, because these were blue and purple. And they moved like waves across the windows. Maya told herself it was probably just some kind of art installation, or maybe the woman was into weird lighting, but something about it made her skin prickle with unease. The next morning, Maya was getting ready for work when she noticed something sitting on her windowsill outside, and when she looked closer, she almost screamed because there was a creature perched there staring at her through the glass. It was about the size of a large cat, but it looked like a tiny dragon with red scales that glinted in the morning sun, and small wings folded against its back, and its eyes were bright gold and full of intelligence that made Maya think this was not just some animal, but something more. The creature tilted its head at her like it was studying her, and then it opened its mouth, and Maya saw sharp teeth and a flicker of flame, and then it jumped off the windowsill and flew away, leaving scorch marks on the wood where its feet had been. Maya called in sick to work that day because her hands were shaking too much to drive, and she spent the morning researching online trying to find any animal that looked like what she had seen, but there was nothing because dragons were not real, and what she saw could not have been real either. But the scorch marks on her windowsill were very real, and Maya touched them with her fingers, and they were still warm. That afternoon, she saw her neighbor again, and this time the woman was standing in her yard with the dragon creature perched on her shoulder, and they were both looking directly at Maya's house, like they knew she was watching them. Maya decided she needed answers, so she walked over to the neighbor's house and knocked on the door, and waited, but nobody answered, even though she could see shadows moving inside, and she knocked again, louder this time, and finally the door opened. Woman with silver hair stood there looking at Maya with those impossible violet eyes, and she did not smile or say hello. She just waited. Maya asked her name, and the woman said her name was Lyrian, and her voice was soft, but had a strange accent that Maya could not place. And Maya asked about the creature, and Lyrian called him Ember, and said he was her companion. Maya wanted to ask more questions, but Lyrian's expression was cold and distant, like she did not want to talk, and Maya felt uncomfortable under that violet stare, so she said goodbye and went back to her house. But she could feel Lyrian watching her the whole way that night. Maya could not sleep because she kept thinking about what she had seen, and she got up and looked out her window and saw Lyrian standing in her yard in the darkness, not moving, just standing there looking up at the stars, and Ember was with her, and he was bigger now, much bigger than he had been that morning, and his scales glowed faintly in the dark. Maya watched them for an hour, and Lyrian never moved, and finally Maya went back to bed, but she had nightmares about dragons and strange lights and violet eyes that saw too much. Next morning, Maya found symbols burned into her front lawn, and they were not letters or numbers, but strange, geometric shapes that seemed to pulse. When she looked at them, and she took pictures with her phone because she thought maybe she was going crazy and needed proof that this was really happening. At work, Maya was supposed to be analyzing data from satellite images, but instead she found herself looking at the pictures of the symbols on her phone, and something about them seemed familiar, and then she remembered seeing similar shapes in some classified files she had been given last week about unidentified signals from deep space Mayas. Heart started beating faster because those files were top secret and nobody outside. The research center was supposed to know about them, and yet here were the same. Symbols burned into her lawn, and her neighbor was the only person who could have done it. Maya left work early and drove home fast because she needed to confront Lyrian and get answers. And when she got to her house, she went straight next door and pounded on the door until it opened and Lyrian stood there, and this time she was not cold and distant, but serious and sad, and she looked at Maya and said that they needed to talk because time was running out. Maya followed Lyrian inside, and the house was not normal because the walls seemed to shimmer and there were devices everywhere that Maya did not recognize, and plants that were definitely not from Earth growing in pots by the window. Lyrian sat down and gestured for Maya to sit too, and then she told Maya the truth. She said she was not from Earth, but from a world very far away, and her people had been watching humanity for a long time because something terrible was coming, and humanity needed to be ready. Maya wanted to laugh because this sounded insane, but she had seen Ember and the symbols and the impossible lights, and she knew deep down that Lyrian was telling the truth. Lyrian said there was a war coming, and an empire of cruel aliens who wanted to conquer Earth and enslave humanity. And the only hope was that humans had something special that other species did not have, and Maya was one of those special humans. Maya asked what made her special, and Lyrian said that Maya had a rare ability in her genes that let her use ancient alien technology, and that was why Lyrian had been watching her, because Maya was important and the enemy was hunting for people. Like her, Maya felt dizzy and overwhelmed because this was too much, and she stood up and said she needed to go home and think, but Lyrian grabbed her arm and said there was no time because the enemy already knew about Maya and they were coming as if on cue. There was a loud explosion in the distance and the ground shook, and Maya looked out the window and saw smoke rising from the direction of her workplace, and her blood went cold. Lyrian stood up and called for Ember, and the small dragon flew to her and then began to grow larger, until he was the size of a horse with wings that spread wide and flames flickering around his mouth. Lyrian looked at Maya with those violet eyes and said that the war had begun, and Maya had to choose whether to fight or hide. Maya thought about all the people at her workplace and her friends and her family, and she knew she could not hide while others suffered. So she told Lyrian she would fight. Lyrian smiled for the first time, and it was a fierce smile full of determination, and she handed Maya a strange silver device and said this was a weapon that only Maya could use because of her special genes. And Maya took it and felt it warm in her hand, and suddenly she knew how to use it without being told. Roared and fire shot from his mouth, and Lyrian said they needed to go now because the enemy was close, and Maya followed them out into a world that would never be the same again. Maya sat in an underground bunker 3 days after the attack on her workplace, and she still could not believe everything that had happened because her normal life was completely gone, and now she was surrounded by military officers and scientists. An alien technology that should not exist. Kate Sullivan sat next to her, and Kate was Maya's best friend from college and also a former intelligence officer, and when Maya called her after the attack, Kate had come immediately, and now she was helping Maya make sense of the chaos. The attack had been brutal and fast because alien soldiers had appeared out of nowhere using some kind of teleportation technology, and they had tried to break into the research center where Maya worked and steal the genetic database that contained information about everyone who worked there. Lyrian and Ember had fought them, and Maya had watched in shock as her strange neighbor moved faster than any human could and created shields of blue light that stopped alien weapons, and Ember had grown even larger and breathed fire that melted through the enemy's armor. Like it was paper, Maya had used the silver weapon Lyrian gave her, and somehow she knew exactly how to aim and fire, and beams of white energy shot out and destroyed 3 of the alien soldiers, and the weapon had felt right in her hands, like it was made for her. But the enemy had escaped with some data, and people had died in the attack, and Maya felt guilty because they had come for her. Or at least for people like her, with the special genetic marker. Commander Lisa Vaughn was in charge of the bunker, and she was tall and intimidating with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and she told Maya that the government had known about aliens for years but kept it secret because they were not ready to reveal the truth to the world. Vaughn said that Lyrian was part of something called the Celestial Alliance, which was a group of alien species who worked together to protect their worlds from the Dominion, which was the empire that had attacked Earth. The Dominion wanted to conquer every world and enslave every species, and they were very powerful with technology that was far beyond what Earth had, and the only reason Earth was not already conquered was because the Alliance had been secretly helping to prepare humanity. Lyrian came into the briefing room and Ember was with her, but he was small again, like a cat, and he jumped onto Maya's lap and curled up there, which surprised everyone because Lyrian said Ember never bonded with anyone except Hurlian. Explain more about her. People called the Ethri, who looked like elves from human stories with their pointed ears and silver hair and violet eyes, and they had special mental powers that let them read emotions and move things with their minds. The Purith were what Ember was, and they were dragon creatures who bonded with ethery warriors for life, and they could change size and breathe fire and fly, and they were loyal unto death. Lyrian said she had been sent to Earth 6 months ago to watch Maya specifically because intelligence said the Dominion was searching for humans with the rare genetic marker, and Maya was one of only 12 people on Earth known to have it. The marker meant Maya could interface with precursor technology, which was ancient alien tech. It's left behind by a mysterious civilization that disappeared millions of years ago, and this technology was scattered across the galaxy, and whoever controlled it would have a massive advantage in the war. Kate asked why the Alliance did not just tell Earth about all this sooner, and Vaughn's face went dark, and she said because the Alliance Council debated whether Earth should even be allowed to exist, or if humans were too dangerous and should be destroyed before they became a threat. Maya felt anger rising in her chest because Lyrian had been sent to judge humanity and decide if they deserved to live, and Lyrian had been pretending to be her neighbor while secretly evaluating whether Maya and everyone she loved should be exterminated. Lyrian looked away and would not meet Maya's eyes, and she said that was not the whole truth because yes, she had been sent to observe. But she had already made her decision within the first week that humans deserved to live, and she had been fighting with the Alliance Council ever since to recognize Earth as an equal partner, but some species in the Alliance did not want equals. They wanted servants, and they saw humanity as tools to be used in the war against the Dominion and thrown away afterward. Kate stood up and said that was unacceptable and humans would not be anyone's tools, and Vaughn agreed and said Earth would fight for its own freedom with or without the Alliance's help. Maya asked Lyrian if she had lied about anything else, and Lyrian was quiet for a long moment and then said there was something else. Maya needed to know. Lyrian said the genetic marker was not random because the precursor technology responded to humans more than any other species, and that was strange because the precursors disappeared millions of years before humans evolved on Earth, unless humans did not evolve naturally, but were somehow connected to the precursors, and that meant humanity might be the descendants of the most powerful civilization that ever existed. Everyone in the room went silent because that changed everything, and if it was true, then humanity was not some primitive species that needed protection, but the inheritors of a vast legacy that the entire galaxy had been searching for. Maya felt overwhelmed again because this was too much responsibility, and she was just an engineer who wanted a quiet life, and now she was being told she was the key to winning a galactic war. Ember made a soft chirping sound in her lap and rubbed his head against her hand, and somehow that small gesture made Maya feel better, because at least she was not alone. And Theslarian said Maya needed to start training immediately because the Dominion would send more soldiers, and next time they would be better prepared. And Maya, you needed to learn how to use her abilities to their full potential, Kate said. She was coming too because Maya needed backup, and Vaughn assigned them both to a special unit that would work with Lyrian to activate precursor installations hidden on Earth and throughout the solar system. Over the next few weeks, Maya trained hard, and Lyrian pushed her to her limits because interfacing with precursor technology was not easy, and it required total mental focus, and Maya had to learn to quiet her mind and open herself up to the ancient machines. The first time Maya successfully activated a precursor weapon, she felt power surge through her body like electricity, and she could see in her mind how the weapon worked and what it could do, and she fired it at a target, and the beam of energy was so bright it left spots in her. Lyrian said Maya was learning faster than anyone she had ever seen, and that confirmed. Maya had strong precursor genes in Ember. Seemed to agree because he spent more and more time with Maya instead of Lyrian, which bothered Lyrian though. She tried not to show it, Kate. Trained with human weapons and tactics, and she coordinated with military units who were being briefed on the alien threat, and slowly Earth was preparing for war. But everyone knew they were outmatched, and the only hope was the precursor technology. One night Maya could not sleep, and she went to the observation deck of the bunker and looked out at the stars and wondered how many of those lights were worlds at war, and how many species had already fallen to. The Dominion Lyrian found her there and stood beside her in silence for a while, and then she said she was sorry for lying and sorry for judging humanity, when her own people were not perfect, and she said she had come to respect and even admire humans because they never gave up even when things seemed hopeless. Maya said she understood why. Lyrian did what she did, but trust had to be earned, and Lyrian had a long way to go before Maya could fully trust her. Again, Lyrian nodded and said, "That was fair." And then she did something unexpected and took Maya's hand, and Maya felt a warm tingle of energy pass between them, and Lyrian said she wanted to show Maya something. Suddenly Maya could see into Lyrian's mind and feel her emotions. And she saw memories of Lyrian arguing with the Alliance Council and defending humanity, even when it put her own position at risk, and she felt Lyrian's genuine guilt and sorrow for deceiving Maya. Maya pulled her hand away, gasping because the connection was intense, and Lyrian looked sad but determined and said she would prove herself through actions, not words too. Days later, the Dominion attacked again, but this time it was not a small strike force but a full invasion fleet, and when the alarms went off, Maya knew everything was about to change forever. The sky turned dark with Dominion warships, and Maya stood on the roof of the bunker, watching in horror as massive alien vessels descended through the clouds and their weapons fired down at cities and military bases and everywhere people were, screaming and running and dying. Aang, Bareen, and Ember were beside her, and Lyrian's face was grim because she knew this was just the beginning, and the Dominion would not stop until Earth was conquered or destroyed. Vaughn called everyone to the command center, and the room was full of monitors showing battles happening all over the world, and human forces were fighting back with everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched the Dominion armor, and their aircraft were shot down before they could get close to the warships. Maya asked what they could do, and Vaughn said there was a precursor installation hidden beneath the Rocky Mountains, and if Maya could activate it, then they would have a weapon powerful enough to fight back. Kate gathered a team of soldiers, and they loaded into armored vehicles and drove toward the mountains, while overhead the sky burned with fire from the orbital bombardment and explosions rocked the ground, and Maya had to grip her seat to keep from being thrown around. Lyrian sat across from Maya, and she was doing something with her mind because blue light flickered around her head, and she said she was communicating with other E3 warriors who were arriving to help defend Earth, but they were outnumbered, and the Alliance fleet was still days away, and was nervous and kept shifting his size from cat to dog to horse and back, again like he could not decide what form was best, and Maya reached out and touched his scales and felt heat radiating from him, and she sent calm thoughts toward him through their strange connection, and he settled down. When they reached the mountains, there was a hidden door carved into the rock face, and Maya approached it and placed her hand on the stone, and suddenly symbols appeared glowing with golden light, and she could feel the precursor technology waking up after sleeping for millions of years. The door opened with a deep rumble, and inside was a vast chamber filled with machines that hummed with power, and in the center was a platform with a control interface that looked like a crystal sphere floating in mid. Maya walked toward it, and Lyrian warned her to be careful because activating precursor weapons could be dangerous if you did not know what you were doing. But Maya felt drawn to the sphere like it was calling to her. She reached out and touched it, and suddenly her mind exploded with information because she could see the entire solar system laid out before her like a map, and she could sense other precursor installations on Earth and Mars and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and they were all connected in a network. The weapon here was designed to create gravitational pulses that could disrupt enemy ships, and Maya concentrated and sent a command through the network, and the installation powered up with a sound like thunder outside. The Dominion warship suddenly lost power and started falling from the sky, and human forces cheered and began counterattacking. And for a moment it seemed like Earth might actually have a chance, but then Maya felt something wrong because the weapon was draining too much energy from her. And her nose started bleeding, and her legs buckled, and Lyrian caught her before she... Lyrian shouted at her to let go, but Maya could not, because if she stopped now, the Dominion ships would recover, and the attack would fail, and more people would decade. Ran to them and demanded to know what was happening, and Lyrian explained that using precursor technology took a toll on the human body, and Maya was pushing herself too hard, and if she did not stop soon, the weapon would kill her. But Maya held on for another minute and another, and she poured everything she had into the weapon. And finally, the last Dominion warship crashed into the ocean, and the sky was clear again. Maya collapsed, and everything went dark, and when she woke up, she was back in the bunker medical bay, and Lyrian was sitting beside her bed, and Ember was curled up on her chest, purring like a cat. Lyrian said Maya had been unconscious for 2 days, and the doctors were not sure she would wake up, because the energy drain had damaged her nervous system, but somehow she had recovered faster than expected. Vaughn came in and said the battle was won, but the war was just beginning because the Dominion would send more ships, and Earth needed to activate all the precursor installations before that happened. Maya tried to sit up, but her body was weak, and Lyrian gently pushed her back down and said she needed to rest, but Maya shook her head and said there was no time for rest over. The next week, Maya pushed herself to travel to different installations and activate them one by one, and each time it got a little easier because she was learning to control the flow of energy and not let it overwhelm her. Lyrian stayed with her constantly and taught her mental techniques to protect her mind, and Ember became her constant companion and guardian, and he grew fiercely protective of Maya, to the point where he would snap at anyone who got too close when she was using the precursor. Technologicate coordinated the military response, and human forces began integrating precursor weapons into their arsenal, and suddenly they had energy shields and plasma cannons and gravity disruptors, and they were no longer helpless against the Dominion. The Alliance fleet finally arrived, and with them came hundreds of E3 warriors and their bonded Pirith and other alien species who had been fighting the Dominion for centuries. But tensions were high, because many Alliance members still saw Earth as a subordinate that should follow orders, and human military leaders refused to accept that, and there were arguments and conflicts between different groups. Maya found herself mediating between humans and aliens, because she understood both sides, and Lyrian supported her, and together they started building bridges between the two groups. One night, after a particularly difficult negotiation, Maya and Lyrian sat on the bunker roof looking at the stars, and Lyrian said she had never met anyone like Maya, who could stay strong and compassionate even in the middle of war. Maya said she had never expected to become friends with an alien who had been spying on her, but here they were. And Lyrian laughed, and it was the first time Maya had heard her laugh, and it sounded like music. Ember appeared, and he was in his large form, now bigger than a horse, and he lowered his head so Maya could scratch behind his horns, and he made a rumbling sound of contentment. Lyrian looked troubled and said something was wrong, because Pirith were supposed to bond with only one person in their lifetime, but Ember had clearly formed a second bond with Maya, and that should not be possible. Maya asked if that was bad, and Lyrian said she did not know because it had never happened before, but she trusted Ember's instincts, and if he chose to bond with Maya, then there must be a good reason then. Lyrian did something unexpected and offered to perform a ritual that would link their minds permanently so they could communicate telepathically and share strength in battle. And Maya was not sure at first because it seemed intimate and permanent, but Lyrian said it would make them stronger together. Maya agreed, and they performed the ritual, and Lyrian chanted in her alien language and pressed her forehead to Maya's. And suddenly, Maya could feel Lyrian's presence in her mind, like a warm light, and she knew. Lyrian could feel her tooth. The connection was intense, and Maya gasped because she could sense Lyrian's thoughts and emotions and memories, and it was overwhelming but also beautiful, and she understood Lyrian in a way that words could never express. From that moment on, they were linked, and they could coordinate in battle without speaking and share energy. When one of them was tired, and it made them formidable together, the Dominion launched another major attack 2 days later, and this time they targeted the moon because they wanted to establish a forward base there and use it to bombard Earth continuously. Maya and Lyrian led a strike team to the moon, and they discovered another massive precursor installation hidden in a crater. And this one was different because it was a weapon platform designed to defend the entire solar system. Maya activated it, but the energy requirement, it was enormous, and even with Lyrian sharing her strength through their mental link, it was almost too much. The weapon fired, and a wave of gravitational force swept through space and tore apart the Dominion fleet like paper, but Maya screamed in pain because the energy backlash was destroying her body from the inside. Lyrian panicked and did something forbidden in ethery culture, and she poured her own life force into Maya to keep her alive, and the medical team later said that was the only reason Maya survived. When Maya woke up this time, she could still feel Lyrian in her mind, but it was different now, stronger and deeper, and she realized they were no longer just linked, but permanently bonded in a way that even Lyrian's people would consider sacred. Maya asked Lyrian why she did it, and Lyrian said because Maya had become more important to her than her own life, and she could not watch her die. At that moment, Maya realized she felt the same way about Lyrian, and their bond was no longer just strategic, but something deeper and more meaningful. The war raged across Earth and space for months, and Maya lost track of how many battles she fought, or how many times she almost died, but Lyrian was always there to pull her back from the edge, and Ember was always there to protect them both. Kate had been promoted to colonel, and now commanded an entire battalion of soldiers, equipped with precursor weapons, and she coordinated strikes against Dominion forces with deadly efficiency. Vaughn worked with Alliance commanders to plan large-scale operations, and slowly the tide began to turn because Earth forces were learning fast and adapting faster than any species the Dominion had faced before. The Dominion was used to enemies who relied on overwhelming numbers or superior technology. But humans were different because they used creativity and unconventional tactics, and they never gave up, even when losing. Maya became a symbol of human resistance, and everywhere she went, soldiers cheered and called her the Precursor Queen, though she hated that title because she was just doing what needed to be done, but she could not deny that she had become powerful because she had activated dozens of precursor installations, and each time her connection to the ancient technology grew stronger until she could interface with it almost effortlessly. Irian said Maya's precursor genes were expressing themselves more fully now. She was becoming something new, something that even the ancient precursors might not have anticipated. Mental link between Maya and Lyrian had grown so strong they sometimes had trouble telling where one mind ended and the other began, and they could share memories and experiences and even skills. Maya learned to use ethereal mental techniques and could now create small force shields and sense emotions in others. And Lyrian learned human languages and customs and began to understand why her people had underestimated humanity. Ember had grown to his full size now, and he was massive, larger than any building with wings that could block out the sun, and when he flew into battle, the Dominion soldiers fled in terror because his fire could melt through their heaviest armor. But Ember remained gentle with Maya and Lyrian and would let them ride on his back when they needed to travel quickly, and Maya felt safe with him even in the middle of chaos. Alliance Council finally acknowledged Earth as an equal member after Maya gave a speech that became famous across the galaxy because she told them that humanity would never bow to anyone, and if the Alliance wanted allies instead of enemies, they needed to show respect. Some Alliance members were offended, but others applauded, and the vote was close, but Earth was granted full membership and the right to vote on Alliance decisions. However, not everyone was happy about this development, and Maya began to notice that some Alliance species still treated humans with contempt, and there were incidents where human soldiers were insulted or denied resources. Kate investigated and discovered a conspiracy because some Kalia's commanders were deliberately withholding supplies and information from Earth forces, trying to make humans fail so they could claim Earth was not worthy of equal status. Vaughn was furious and confronted the Alliance Council, but they denied knowing anything about it, and Maya realized the Alliance was more divided than she thought. Lyrian confirmed this, and said there had always been factions within. The Alliance and some believed in cooperation, while others believed in domination, and the war with the Dominion had made these divisions where Smaya asked which side Lyrian was on, and Lyrian said she was on Earth's side now, because she had seen what humans could achieve when given a chance, and she believed the future of the galaxy depended on humanity fulfilling its potential. Then when came the day when intelligence reports revealed the Dominion was building something massive and deep. Space and Alliance scouts said it was a planet-killer weapon that could destroy entire worlds by harvesting all biological matter to fuel the Dominion war machine. The target was Earth, and the weapon would arrive in 2 weeks, and once it fired, nothing could stop it, and everyone on Earth would die panic, spread through human forces because they had fought so hard and lost so much, and now it seemed like it was all for nothing. Vaughn called an emergency meeting and said they needed a plan. An Alliance commander suggested evacuating as many people as possible to other worlds, but Maya said no, because that would mean abandoning Earth. Lyrian agreed and said there must be another way, and Maya spent days analyzing data from precursor installations looking for a solution. Finally, she found something because there was a network of precursor installations throughout the solar system that could theoretically create a time dilation field large enough to trap the planet killer and freeze it in time, but the energy requirement was astronomical, and even if they linked all the installations together and had Maya channeled the power, it would still not be enough, and the attempt would kill her. Vaughn said they would find another way, but Maya said there was no other way, and she was willing to sacrifice herself if it meant saving Earth. Kate was angry and said Maya was not allowed to die, and Lyrian was silent because through their mental link she could feel Maya's determination, and she knew nothing would change her mind then. Lyrian said there was another option, because if she performed a forbidden, ethery ritual, she could amplify Maya's power by sacrificing her own life force, but it would kill her in the process. Maya refused immediately and said she would not let Lyrian die for her, but Lyrian said it was her choice, and she had already made peace with it because she had found something worth dying for. They argued for hours, and Maya could feel Lyrian's resolve through their link, and she realized Lyrian was serious about this, and nothing would change her mind either. Ember listened to them argue, and then he made a decision, and he communicated through their link that there was a third option. Because Pyrith could act as living conduits for massive amounts of energy if they returned to their true form. Lyrian was shocked because she did not know Pyrith could do this, and Ember explained that most Pyrith never reached their true form, because it required them to sacrifice their physical body and become pure energy. But if Ember did this, he could channel the precursor network through himself and create the time dilation field without killing either Maya or Lyrianeth. Cost was that Ember would cease to exist as a physical being and would become a permanent part of the precursor network, and he would never be able to return to his original forma. Illyrian both refused and said they could not ask Ember to make that sacrifice, but Ember said it was not their choice, and he had already decided. He said he had bonded with both of them because he knew this day would come, and he had been preparing for it all along. And he was not afraid because he would always be with them through the network. Lyrian was crying now, and Maya held her because they both loved Ember and could not imagine life without him. But Ember nuzzled them both and said this was his purpose, and he was proud to fulfill it. The day the planet killer arrived, Ember flew up into space and transformed, and his body dissolved into streams of golden energy that connected all the precursor installations across the solar system. Maya and Lyrian stood at the main control platform holding hands, and they could feel Ember's presence flowing through them, through the network, and he was everywhere and nowhere all at once. The planet killer fired its harvesting beam at Earth, but Ember activated the time dilation field and the beam froze in midair, caught in a bubble where time moved so slowly it might as well have stopped. But the field was unstable, and Maya realized they needed to do more than just trap the planet killer. They needed to destroy it, or eventually the field would collapse. Through her connection to the network, Maya saw the planet killer's core, and she understood how it worked, and she realized they could reprogram it. She told Lyrian her plan, and Lyrian said it was insane, but it might work. And they told Kate and Vaughn, who organized a strike team to board the planet killer while it was frozen Maya. And Lyrian led the team personally because only they could interface with the planet killer's systems through the precursor network. The interior of the planet killer was a nightmare of dark corridors and alien machinery that pulsed with stolen life energy, and Maya could feel the screams of countless worlds that had been harvested to fuel this weapon. Dominion soldiers were everywhere, but they moved in extreme slow motion because of the time dilation field, and the strike team carefully navigated around them toward the core. Kate and her soldiers provided cover, while Maya and Lyrian worked their way deeper into the ship, and Ember's presence guided them through the network, showing them the safest path. They reached the core, and it was massive, a sphere of swirling energy that contained the power of entire planets, and Maya approached the control interface and placed her hands on it. Immediately, she was flooded with data, and she could see how the planet killer worked and how to reprogram it, but the systems were protected, and she needed to break through multiple layers of security. Lyrian linked her mind with Maya's, and together they worked faster than either could alone, and they complemented each other perfectly because Maya understood the precursor technology, and Lyrian understood energy manipulation. Time was running out because the time dilation field was weakening, and soon the Dominion forces would realize what was happening and activate their defenses. Kate shouted a warning because some of the Dominion soldiers were starting to move faster as the field destabilized, and the strike team engaged them in combat that looked surreal because everyone was moving at different speeds. Maya pushed harder and finally broke through the security and accessed the planet killer's core programming, and she began rewriting it line by line, changing its target from Earth to the Dominion fleet. Lyrian fed her energy through their link because the strain was enormous, and Maya's body was trembling and blood ran from her nose and ears, but she did not stop. Finally, it was done, and Maya activated the new programming, and the planet killer's harvesting beam reversed direction and swept through space, targeting Dominion warships instead of Earth. The Dominion fleet tried to flee, but they were too slow, and the beam caught them, and their ships dissolved into energy that fed back into the planet killer, creating a cascade reaction. Maya and Lyrian ran for the exit, and the strike team followed, and they barely made it to their shuttle before the planet killer began tearing itself apart from the overload. They escaped just as the massive weapon exploded. The blast wave lit up space brighter than the sun, and when it faded, the entire Dominion invasion fleet was gone. Back on Earth, people cheered and celebrated because they had won and the immediate threat was over, but Maya and Lyrian collapsed from exhaustion because they had given everything they had. Maya woke up 3 days later in the medical bay, and Lyrian was beside her, and they were both alive, and Maya reached out through the precursor network and felt Ember's presence still there, watching over them. Ember could not speak anymore, but they could feel his emotions, and he was happy and proud and at peace, and Maya cried because even though he was gone, he was also still with them. In a way, the war was not over because the Dominion was a vast empire, and losing one fleet would not stop them. But Earth had proven itself and gained the respect of the entire galaxy. The Alliance Council formally recognized humanity as a leading member and human. Representatives were given positions of authority in strategic planning. Kate was promoted to general and put in charge of integrating human and Alliance forces, and she proved to be brilliant at it because she understood both military tactics and diplomacy. Vaughn became Earth's ambassador to the Alliance, and she fought tirelessly to ensure humanity's voice was heard and respected. Maya and Lyrian continued to work together, activating more precursor installations throughout Alliance space and teaching others how to interface with the ancient technology. They discovered that other humans had the precursor marker, and Maya trained them to use their abilities, and slowly a new generation of precursor specialists emerged. The mental link between Maya and Lyrian remained strong, and they could communicate across vast distances, and they became legends known throughout the galaxy as the bonded pair who saved Earth. One day, Maya and Lyrian returned to Colorado, to the neighborhood where they first met, and the houses were damaged from the war, but still standing. They walked through the ruins of Maya's old house and remembered how everything began when Maya saw strange lights and a mysterious neighbor who watched her. Lyrian said she had been so afraid when she first arrived because she carried the weight of judging an entire species and deciding whether they deserved to live, but humans had exceeded every expectation and shown courage and adaptability and compassion, even in the darkest times, and Lyrian said she was honored to call Earth her home now. Maya said she never imagined her life would turn out like this, but she would not change it because she had found purpose and friendship and a connection deeper than anything she thought possible. They decided to rebuild the neighborhood together and make it a symbol of cooperation between humans and aliens, and other species offered to help, and soon the area became a thriving community. Kate visited them often and told stories about battles won and alliances formed, and she joked that she never expected her best friend to become the most famous human in the galaxy. Vaughn also came by when she had time, and she thanked Maya and Lyrian for giving her the chance to lead humanity into a new era, and she said the future was brighter than anyone dared hope at night. Maya and Lyrian sat on their porch looking at the stars, and they could feel Ember's presence in the network connecting all the precursor installations across the galaxy. The stars were no longer distant and mysterious, but familiar and welcoming because humanity had claimed its place among them through courage and sacrifice. The Dominion would return eventually because evil never completely disappeared, but Earth was ready now, and humanity would never be alone again. Maya reached out and took Lyrian's hand, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded them both of hope. New neighbors moved in down the street, and they were a family of Alliance aliens who wanted to learn about Earth, and they waved at Maya and Lyrian, who waved back. Children played in the yards, both human and alien, and they laughed together without fear or prejudice because they represented the future, where species work together instead of fighting. Maya thought about how far she had come from being a lonely engineer who just wanted a quiet life to being someone who helped save her world and forge a new alliance. She thought about Ember and how his sacrifice made everything possible, and she sent a silent thank you through the network and felt warmth flow back, as if he was saying he would do it again. Lyrian squeezed her hand, and through their link, Maya felt Lyrian's contentment and love and gratitude for this strange, beautiful life they had built together. The war continued in distant parts of the galaxy, but here on Earth there was peace and rebuilding and hope for tomorrow. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Maya knew that whatever came next, they would face it together as partners, as friends, as family, because she had learned that the greatest strength was not technology or weapons or even courage, but connection and the willingness to stand with others even when the universe seemed dark. Her new neighbor had been an alien, a woman who observed her and judged her and eventually became the most important person in her life. And together, they had changed the galaxy forever.